Hello and welcome back to the Ultimate Beginner's Guide to City Skylines 2. Many cities, at least here in the US, formed around rail connections. And it's no surprise, rail is an incredibly efficient way of getting goods and people to and from cities. In fact, in reality, one cargo train can carry as much as 300 truckloads worth of goods. And a commuter train like the Acela, which travels between Boston and Washington, D.C., can carry over 300 passengers. These trains take vehicles off the road that would have created traffic and air pollution. In City Skylines 2, the same dynamics exist. Cargo trains can carry up to 48 truckloads worth of goods, and passenger trains can carry up to 840 passengers. So both can go a really long ways towards improving the traffic and air quality of your city if implemented correctly. If implemented incorrectly, they can do the opposite, dumping tons of traffic into already congested areas. In today's video, we'll begin implementing a rail system, starting with cargo rail. And a significant amount of the work we do today will help us in the future as we look to implement passenger rail. And we're taking the two separately because we're going to need to take on a massive infrastructure project to get rail into our city, rebuilding this interchange. We're also going to have to call a number of mulligans on this industrial district as we build our network out. So this episode will be absolutely packed with building. And be sure to stick around till the end because we're going to be renaming every single neighborhood in the city. We're also going to name this little town that we built in the previous episode. And if you're excited to take on rail, hit the like button. And if you like traffic, hit the like button for that too, and let me know what you prefer in the comments. Or leave an emoji that represents your opinion for the sake of engagement. Without any further ado, let's jump right in. Our build today is going to be fairly complex, so I think there's value in going over today's plan. The very first thing that we need to build is our rail depot. And we need to really think about the location for this because it needs to tie into our rail line, and it could be a significant barrier if we don't place it appropriately. I'm thinking that this location right here is our best bet. Now, there's a few reasons for this. First of all, historical development patterns. You often see these things along major transportation corridors and near interchanges because the land there would be fairly undesirable while also providing good access to the highway. So that would be a reason why we might consider this right here. And it's near our landfill, so the land is doubly undesirable, so this is probably a good location for this. We could also minimize the barrier effect that this has right here by sneaking it as close to our interstate as possible. And because we're planning on building across the interstate, we're going to need to reconsider this interchange right here and completely rebuild it. So that'll be the second thing that we do. Once we've completed that, we are going to bring the rail into our community so that we can meet up with a cargo train terminal that we'll build right about here. This will likely mean that we need to call a couple of mulligans on our industrial park and maybe even reconsider the location of our transformer. And because of that, we're going to finish out the episode by expanding our industrial park to replace some of the industrial that we are inevitably going to need to take for this build. And as we do that, I want to think a little bit about this shoreline and maybe even build a quay wall along there, something that we haven't done up until now. And now that we know the plan, let's build our rail yard. So let's begin by unlocking trains, which only costs one development point to unlock. And now that we've unlocked that, we can take a look at our rail yard. I'm gonna hit I so I can see the world, and we can see that this is very, very large. So I'm thinking of placing it kind of like this so that we can take the main line, which is right down the middle, and send it underneath the highway right about here. So we're gonna have to unlock some tiles, likely this one, and maybe even this one just for good measure. And truthfully, I think that we need this one as well if we want to be able to tee in and go in both directions. And now I think we've got to do a bit of terraforming and lower the ground right here considerably. And the main reason for that is, again, I want to go underneath the highway and I want to keep everything relatively flat. So we're going to grab our Shift Terrain tool and right mouse click very quickly. And that'll give us, it looks like it's about 10 meters. Let's spread this a bit. So we'll go into our level terrain tool, right mouse click in the center and then spread this out. And it's maybe a little bit steeper than I'd like it to be. I'm going to go up 2 contour lines, right mouse click, and now bring it up just a little bit. Now I can tell that this is about where I want it to be because when I come up to the side of the highway, I'm not seeing those rough edges. It still looks green. It's about 7 meters, which is about the height that we want this to be if we want to be able to go underneath the highway. So I'm going to pull this here. We're going to go into a much smaller brush size, and I'm trying to send this along the side of this road right here, which we're likely going to replace as well. And we'll stick with that exact same height. Now this road is going a bit further than it has to. I'm going to add a node, delete this end, and then delete the temporary line that I created for myself. And now we are going to continue to prep the site by deleting this entryway into town. And temporarily, I want to figure out where our bridge is going to go. So I'm going to send this straight down, and we're going to have a bridge basically over the top of our train tracks. So that's why we're doing this, and we'll sever this for now. And now let's make a pad for our train yard. So I'm going to increase the size back to 100, right mouse click in here once again, and this should be diagonal. So we'll cut directly through here diagonally. And if we go a little too big, we'll figure it out afterwards, not a big deal. And here is our train yard. We want the road to be facing away from the highway. And the primary reason for that is it'll be a little bit easier to access this facility. And we should talk about the trade-offs of doing it like this. So this is going to be very nice in terms of access. So we're going to basically replace this couplet here with a single highway road, and we'll send that across the highway here. And then we can connect up with just a normal 2-lane road right here. But you might notice this is loading in the wrong direction. So we won't be able to get right back into town. It's not a big deal. With all of our outside connections, the trains can turn around. In the future, though, if we create new outside connections, we might need to think about turnarounds and how that works. But for now, I'm not going to worry about it all that much. If it were a big concern to you, you could certainly spin this around. I just think that the terrain in this particular area, it's not great. It goes up the further that we go. So this is probably our best bet. Next, I want to figure out where we have more height. Is it right here where we have our rail yard, or right here where our track is? So I'm going to right mouse click inside of our rail yard, left click over here, and you can see that it's actually higher over by the train track. So we'll slope from our train track to our rail yard. So right mouse click up here using our slope terrain tool, left click at our rail yard second, and then we'll cut right into the hillside. And this is kind of similar to blasting that you might see in these sites. And we're going to go and overdo it a little bit, and we'll come back afterwards and clean it up. Not a big deal. Now let's finally lay some track. So I know that I want to meet up with the center here. This is the pass-through track. I'm going to add a straight track right through the center here, and then we'll join this up with both our rail yard and this existing train track. So for this, we're going to go into simple curve. We'll start right here at the rail yard, and once we find our guideline, and it says 180 at the rail yard, we can turn right in. Beautiful connection right there. And then over here, I want to basically start out with a straight track first. So we'll come in at 180, and I can see that I already need to clear a bit more of this. So we'll once again slope, and then we'll simple curve right into this. And for this one, I'm basically going to line this perfectly straight up with this track, click on the track, and then pull it in. I need to take even more of that hillside. And then we'll do the exact same thing over here, straight into this, click once we're there, and then curve right in. And now we have nice radii here, which means that the trains will be able to have a considerable amount of speed through here. The trade-off is that we're consuming more land. This is a bigger barrier if we wanted to develop in this area in the future. I want this to look natural. I don't want it to encroach at all on the track. So I'm going to get as close as I can without actually touching it. And we're just using our soften terrain tool. Now, before we finish up, we've got to make these couple of connections over here. And we're going to use our two-way train track for this. And this will be where some of our trains that are being repaired or stored are able to meet up with the main line. And there we go. That will do the trick for us. And I think it looks pretty darn good. Let's smooth out the sides here. And as we get closer to this facility, we are going to be contending with the fact that it has this flat pad. So we're just going to flare it out a bit here. And that looks pretty darn good. You wouldn't even be able to tell that there was a flat pad right here. Now, I want to also add this road before I forget about it. So we'll go into our 2-lane road. The only thing I really care about is snapping to the side of the building. And we'll just run this along the side here so that we don't forget about it. And this will also allow us to finish our sloping here. Very good. Now let's get a train track going along the side of this road here. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to turn on our parallel mode, increase the offset to 2, and then we'll go with our double track because this is going to be a main line in the future. And then we've got to start from this side so the track ends up on top. If we were to start over here, it's on the wrong side. And I'm just going to run this along the side of this road here. And now we at least know that we're paralleling right here, which is all I really care about. Then we'll go into our curve tool, and I want to find that main line right there. We'll turn right in. We know it's perfect when we got that cross. And now it's just a matter of making our couple of connections. And for this, I'm going to go to 180, click with our continuous tool and pull it a bit further. We'll do the exact same thing right here. I just think that that looks really, really clean. Really, really clean. I want to point out one thing that I missed earlier. You do have the ability to upgrade this, so you can go ahead and grab additional tracks on here if you wanted to expand. This would be challenging here, but not impossible. But ultimately, what the extra tracks will give you is increased capacity for more trains, 5 additional vehicles by adding this on at a cost of $16,000 per month. So it's actually pretty reasonable. And then when you look at your maintenance haul, that's $30,000 per month. You can maintain your vehicles faster, which can be helpful as well. And now with our rail yard in place, we're ready to rebuild this interchange. So the very first thing I want to do here is make our highway consistent. So that's just replacing these highway segments that are all different lane numbers with a 2-lane highway. I just think it'll be easier for me to visualize what this looks like. So it's as simple as using the replace tool and then dragging from one end to the other. We'll do the exact same thing over here. And because we've upgraded this in the directionality of the road, we don't even have to change the direction here. And now I'll sever these little bits that we don't need, including right here, because we're actually going to call a pretty significant mulligan on the Underhill Highway. But before we do that, I'm going to do one thing that's a little bit weird. I'm going to extend the trench. So I'm going to select this height here and once again pull that along. And we're going to do a bit of dezoning along the way. And I'm going to get rid of all of these and these as well. Now, the reason that we're doing this is we are going to continue this rail facility along here at some point. For now, I'm just finding that guideline and I'm just going to continue to send this way. And now that we have our trench right here, I'm going to get rid of the bi-directional road right here. I think it'll be easier to build the interchange if we have a consistent 4-lane road right here. So we'll grab our 4-lane 2-way highway and we'll upgrade this. I'm going to turn everything off except for snapping and 90s. So we're snapping to existing geometry at a 90-degree angle. That's perfect. And that will allow us to snap right to the center. And as we come along here, we can start to see that we have a key wall forming and this is relatively flat. I'm going to take this in small chunks, because you got to understand, as I pull this out, it's showing me the average difference in slope, but not for individual segments. So if I go from here to here, I can see it's actually going up 2.7%. I'll take my elevation step way down, and I don't even want to focus on the elevation step as much as I do what that percentage is for the slope. And I'm able to get this key wall because I have a higher elevation right here, midway through the road, and a lower elevation from our train track right beneath. So this is a fun way of creating key walls. Maybe fun's the wrong word. So I find making key walls in this game to be very frustrating, but it is the way that you do it. You can do it consistently and come up with a pretty nice result. That said, you can see it was kind of flickering back and forth. I'm getting a little bit close to the edge. It's unsure of how to handle my request, and as a result, it's flickering back and forth between key wall and non-key wall. So just be mindful of that. And as we get closer to the highway, I am going to boost this up because I need to be able to clear the highway. And this is 2.9%, and it looks like that'll get us over the highway. We're going to reserve this height for now, and I like what it's done on this side too. That looks really cool. We need to make sure that the highway can clear the train track, and I am a little bit concerned because you can see that it looks like the highway is lower than our electrical lines here, but I can see that the highway is dipping down. So I'm hoping that we can actually get rid of a portion of our highway and then just raise the elevation. So we'll level the terrain here up, and you can see it's actually quite a significant slope. And then on the other side, we'll do the exact same thing. So I'm going to back this out just a little ways. Grab this height. We'll add that over here. And oh, look at that. We are conflicting with our rail facility, of course. Right mouse click at the top, left at the bottom, and we can slope up. And we'll fix that little bit of jank in a little bit. let's finish off our highway. So we'll go back into our 2-lane highway, and we're going to use our parallel road tool, and we'll take this down to a half, maybe 0.25, and we'll take our elevation step all the way down. We've got to start in the bottom if we want this to line up. Looks perfect. We'll go into our continuous tool so we can attempt to line this up, and then we'll go straight and try to line up right underneath our 4-lane highway right here. And then we'll cross this, and look at how nice and gentle that is because of the changes that we've made. And before we finalize this, I want to see if I can get a nice key wall right here. So I'm going to grab the height and went into the level terrain tool, right mouse click down here, and I'm trying to line up with the side of the highway in the center lane right there. And now we'll back that end up, turn off parallel for just a moment, and I'm turning on my guidelines so I can hopefully snap. That looks pretty darn amazing. And now we'll just need to make our final connection. We'll back this out a little bit further. Once again, parallel at 0.25. And now this time we'll use our simple curve. Click once and connect right in. Now, interestingly, this side didn't line up. I think we'll just give that another shot without parallel. Oh, that is just beautiful. I just love that. Now we're going to change the directionality, go back to our replace tool, got all of our snap twos on, click on the segment that needs to be reversed. And now that I come back into this, I'm noticing we've got a strange dip in the highway. So we'll have to redo one more segment. And it's, of course, the one that I was so proud of. But it was a pretty simple fix. Gosh, that looks good. I'm really pleased with how that turned out. The cut and fill, once you get a handle around it, it's not difficult to use, and the results can be really outstanding. So obviously we could do this all over the place. We could do it on either side, but I think that we're going to be pretty happy with how this has turned out so far. And now I just want to mirror this side over here. And that's why I've grabbed that same height and brought it on over here. And then I'm grabbing the highway height and extending that out as well. I want this to be as predictable as possible. And then we'll grab this height down here. And once again, send that out along where we want our key wall to form. Now, I think that we should have done a good enough job that we can just easily go back into our 4-lane highway, snap right here, send this across, get to that 180 and bump this up. And then we just want to make sure that we're flat across here, or as flat as we can be. And it looks like 2.2 is the best we're going to get. And then from there, we just want to make our way back down to the ground. So I'm going to come at 180, continuous tool, drop this thing down to 0. And I want to try to maintain my position on this side of this so that we get that key wall. Oh, that's beautiful. And the other side too. Oh, just as good, just as good. So we'll send this off into the abyss, and we're going to need to make a nice connection here as well. The one thing I'm noticing is that we've got a parking facility right here. So we're going to add a node slightly after, because if we look, we've got some terrain to conquer. So I want to delete that. We're going to go into our slope terrain tool, and I basically want to slope from this road down to this one. So we'll come with a very small brush size, 20, right mouse click up here where we want to go, come back where we are, and slope up to that, holding down our left button. And now we have a nice slight turn right there. Like that a lot. We'll come in from this road, and I think ideally I'd come in at a 90. Sometimes ideal isn't the world that we live in. So we'll come in like that, and then we'll add a roundabout here because we all know how much truck drivers love that. And I'm noticing it's bending this, so we're not going to do that. It'll be fine. We'll make the truck drivers happy. And now along the side here, I am going to clean things up before we add our ramps. And I'm basically going to come in at the level that we're at down here and just smooth it out. Now we've got our final bit of this, and that is adding our lanes. But before we can do that, I think that we should probably fix our elevations right here. One thing I want to do is come up with where we are going to be meeting right here and raise up the ground. I'm going to say that this is probably where our ramp's going to come in, and I will grab the elevation line. So I'm trying to grab the same elevation line that our road is at. So it's right about here, and then I'm flattening to that. You can see that that's pretty darn good. And I'll take that to this side as well. And those will be the two places where we are lining up with our ramps. Now I want to add a node, because the easiest way to create our ramps is if we have 3 lanes on the side of the highway. And I want to make these fairly consistent. So let's measure, we'll go maybe 218 meters. It's not 100% perfect, but I just added a node right there. And then we'll upgrade this segment of the highway to have 3 lanes. Now, there's a couple of reasons that we care about this. The first is that we are going to slope where our ramp is going to go. So that's going to be important. And then the second is that we are going to be able to just grab right into here and make our connection easy as pie. So I'm going to go into our 1-lane, 1-way highway. We'll go into our continuous tool, and I'm lined up with this lane right here at a perfect 180. Click, send this over, and then we'll just try to come up and line up as nicely as we can right here, all the way across, looking really, really good. Now, it gave me some cut and fill action here, but I kind of like the sides, so I'm not going to worry all that much about it. And we'll just try to mirror what we did on this side over here. But we've got a power line right in the way. But pause this for just a moment. I don't like doing that. If you watch my channel for any length of time, you'll know that I like to keep things running. I'm backing this out. I'm going to fix the ground around this, so we will gentle this up, and then we'll reestablish this power line. And that is reconnected. The last thing we need to do is make sure that our directionality is correct, and this one is wrong. Just as simple as going into your replace tool once again, pulling it in the right direction. Looks really, really good. Oh boy, this is going to bug me. So I thought that I was okay with this, but I will be honest and say that I am not. I would advise you not to do what I'm about to do. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. I often do this though, and the results are predictable and they're bad. So let's just see if I can fix it though. Let's just see if I have it in me today. I spent way longer on that than I should have. Folks, do as I say, not as I do. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Now, I think that you could make a reasoned argument that this should be a parklow, because we're going to go over the top of the rail track here, which is going to be interesting, but I think we're going to go with it anyway. I'm going to measure from this location about 200. So that's right about here. Once again, add that node, and then we need to upgrade this. And now I want to start on this side. I think this will be the easier side to start on. And it's not going to let us go there because of that building. So we'll pull it up a little ways. Oh, and that's a killer. So what's happening now is I am too close to the rail yard, and you'll encounter this from time to time. Here's how we will deal with it. I'm going to shift the whole road over in stages. So I am pulling this over here, upgrading to the 3-lane right here. And then down here, we've got to move it as well. And then I will change the 2-lane segment over here. And this right here, friends, is the power of the replace tool. It is absolutely outstanding. If you're not using it, you need to be. And we'll just play around with this until we get this to look fairly reasonable. And I think that right here, we'll basically get rid of these 2 segments, have snap to existing geometry on, and snap to guidelines, and just try to line up with this road nicely. And there we go. We shifted it over. You wouldn't be any the wiser. We've obviously got some work to do back here, but our ramps are what matter first. And for this, it's just like our other ramps. Find this side, raise this up so that it can actually exist. We want the slope to be positive on this one. So we'll go 2.9 right in the center here. And then we'll line up right there. Perfect. And now we're going to grab this to reverse it. And that one is done. And there we go. Perfect on both sides. Let's clean this bit of it up. And the way that we'll do that is just to sever this right about here. Make sure our elevation step is all the way down. And then just once again, join up with our existing roads. And there we go. Our convoluted highway interchange is complete. There's a couple more things I want to do. We're going to slope things out here, resume our simulation once again because we can. And I just want to really make this look gentle along here. And as we get closer to our train track, we're going to need to get an even more gentle brush size. And I may shift this. You can see that the train track actually is flaring out a bit. So we'll probably change this just a little bit down the line. So we'll worry about that in just a moment. I want to think a little bit about the turning movements here though. And this is something I encourage you to do. You see, we've got a 4-lane road here. If we were to replace the end of this, we could have something like this where we have a dual left and a single right. I think that that's probably a solid move here. because most people are going to want to go into the town, not to the rail facility. Same thing over here. Now, interestingly, there's not much I can do to make this a dual left. If I wanted that, I likely have to upgrade it to this. We are going to just not worry all that much right here. We'll let this be, and it will still do the trick for us. And now with our interchange complete, let's add our cargo train terminal. So what we're about to do is incredibly invasive. We are going to be filling in some land here, adding a quay wall along the water, and potentially even changing the way that this bridge meets up with the park highway. But before we do all of that, I do think that we need to fix our train track here and get things moving. I'm going to get rid of this connection, and then we'll flatten this, and let's actually fix this train track like I mentioned. It looks like it flares out right about there. So rather than attempting to parallel this, which was a good thought, I think that what we'll do is take that a step back and then just attempt to eyeball the perfect line. And really, it doesn't need to be perfect. This is completely flat, 0.1% grade, negative 0.1. That is just fine. And then I want to establish a bridge across here. And everything is back as it was, except that we've grade separated this. And that is considerably safer than if we were to have this running straight through that road. It's also going to keep our traffic flow in a good place in the future. It's really interesting seeing how this road just meanders. So I mentioned that our facility is going to be along the water here. What I want to do is grab a moderate brush size. We're going to use our level terrain tool. I know that we're going to need to have a connection between this industrial district and this terminal. So we're going to grab one layer right here so we can get underneath this bridge. And then the next layer is going to be right here. And for this one, this is going to be the layer of our terminal. And then I know I want a quay wall here. So what we'll do is grab this height and extend this along the side of this facility. I want to send this road down, and I really want to line up perfectly. So we'll go right here. And then this is the same as before. We bump it up and we just try to make sure this is as flat as can be. And I'm pretty good with 0.7% grade. That's pretty flat. So we've done this because we will eventually bring the water to this. If we were to try to do this in the water, I'm sure that you've had this concern. It says it's in water. It's really difficult to make the quay wall. If you have a bit of ground, and then after you build your quay wall, you bring the water to the quay wall, you end up with that quay wall that you wanted, but it's super easy to do. So this is how you should do that. If you want to make a quay wall, it's the easy way to do it. But now that we have that, let's go ahead and place our cargo train terminal. It will be facing in the wrong direction. At this point, I'm just using it as a guideline, and we're going to flatten out the ground around it. And you can see we're even encroaching upon our existing forestry industry. It's okay. We'll get this fixed. We're leveling this right here. And then I'm going to need to move this. I want to add a road along here, but I can't because it's too close. So we'll just adjust the area here. And we'll fix this industry at the end of the episode when we detail. But for the time being, we'll just make it a bit smaller, and then I'll run this along here. The reason that we've done this is now I can grab this building and relocate it and face it along this road. And now this track right here is facing in the correct orientation. So I mentioned at the start of the episode, I thought we were going to need to move this transformer station. That potential is now an actuality. We must move it. So we're going to get rid of this. We're going to go into our slope terrain tool. This should be our top height. We'll right mouse click up here, left down here, and sweep around. But before we make our connection in, I'm going to send this connection straight through. So I want this train line to extend through the city eventually. That'll be for our passenger rail. But for now, we're just stubbing this in. Then I will add this segment, and now we'll add this track. I'm going to add a pillar right here, and then we can delete this. And I'm going to come in from this road right here and line things up. Now, I'm actually thinking that perhaps this will look a little bit better if we take our normal road and extend it to this intersection right here. And I'm going to once again let perfect be the enemy of good, and I'll shift this over. So you can see that there's a little bit of an offset here, and I think that we can fix this once again with our replace tool. Now that we have this, we are almost in a spot to get this thing moving again. We are snapping to the side of the building once again. And I want to connect these roads up that we already have. And now I'm going to run this just to see if things break. If they do, yeah, we're disconnected up here. So let's pop back in and look at these water pipes. They are absolutely crazy right now. We're going to go underground and try to redo these ourselves. And it is our combined pipe that we have right here. And I'm going to change this. I think what we'll do is we'll connect up with this road across the river. That should connect us up with almost everything except for this area right here. We will make a connection underneath this highway and we'll meet up right here. And then we need another connection that goes over to this road. So rather than following this and trying to go up and over the highway, we'll go under, which seems much more logical to me. It's not underneath the road, but it's right where it belongs. And then for our power, we don't have power over here. We are going to upgrade this road in our road services and we'll add our lighting. I'm just selecting this area, this part of the highway, and bringing it down all the way to here. And now we have lights. We can resume this. Everything here should be connected at this point. Perfect. That is perfect. But there is one oddity right here. Let's get this repaired. And it looks like it's unhappy that there's an extra water pipe here. I think we can just upgrade this to be just a sanitary sewer pipe, and that should be good to go. Now that we've done that, we've got one more thing left to do with our cargo, and that is create a line. This operates exactly the same as the buses. So we'll just go into our line tool here. We'll select our cargo train terminal, and then I'll go to the end of the map, select the outside connection, which is Milford, and then we'll select this as well. And we're gonna do the exact same thing another time. So now we've got 2 cargo train lines. And if we click on this facility, we can see the 2 cargo routes here. We can also click on this facility to learn more about it. It's got 2 upgrades. We have the extra tracks, which will give us more capacity for trains, 25,000 a month in upkeep. This is one of those upgrades that occurs in line. This honestly would look very, very fine right here. We could certainly add this, no problem. The other upgrade is our warehouse. So this one would be more challenging. We would either need to relocate this road, not a big deal, or expand our quay wall. Maybe that's something that gets done in the future. But the reason any of that even matters is this facility can store goods, and it's going to try to balance our economy, importing things that we need and exporting things that we have surpluses of. So personally, I think that this is a very important building to have, and you should definitely add this whenever you can afford it. And with our cargo train terminal complete, let's rebuild our industrial area. So the reason that I want to focus on the industrial area is number 1, our demand is off the charts. And number 2, we got rid of a bunch of industrial, and we don't really have all that much in the city. So I feel like we should at least maintain what we have. This is a challenging place to work though, which makes me believe that this is a great location to really start to think about controlling our terrain as much as we can. So what I'm going to do is flatten this out, and we're going to add a quay wall to this. We don't have any boats just yet, but I'm going to add a couple of these through here. That's way too extreme for this area. But we're basically trying to form where we will potentially have some sort of a warehouse district or something like that. So I need another layer now. So we're going to grab this height up here, and we basically just want to raise this up the same as we did for our quay walls that we built over here and over here. We're just having these layers of elevation so that we can quite easily make those quay walls. So we're going to begin, and I'll start in the corner here, and I'm going to raise this up as low as I can. And again, this is all about keeping it flat. And it looks like 2.5 meters of change is just about perfect for us. Now for this one, I'm going to snap to guidelines because I want this one to end perfectly in line with that one. And now we're going to have this little bump out here. And the reason this would happen is the quay would be conforming to a specific building. Obviously, we don't have any buildings that we're conforming to, but we can pretend. And now I'm going to dig this out. So I'm just going to come in with about 50 brush strength, go fairly low to the ground. And I've got to be really careful here. Maybe we'll even go smaller because we want to make sure that we're not going too far and creating problems for ourselves. Because if we go too far, we'll dig on the other side, and that's not what we want. There we go. Now, the next thing that I want to do is we're likely actually going to get rid of this road temporarily and try to spread that slope out just a little bit. And I got rid of the one road that I couldn't. A bit of an unforced error there. But the reason that I wanted to do that is we need to get down to this height. So going up to go down doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I believe that this is a taller height. We're going to right mouse click here, left over here. It's slightly taller. So we'll slope from right here down. And then I know that I basically want to follow this. So I will create that little shelf for ourselves. A couple meters up, just along here. And now we just need to slope from up here down to here. And there we go. We've got our connection in here. Let's make sure that this connection is reestablished before we resume. And after this, we will clean up this shoreline again. You know, I think I could have gotten rid of this and done something differently, but we might add a little bit of a pedestrian facility over here for some of the workers at these factories to go on a lunch break, maybe have a picnic or something of that nature. You should provide for those sorts of things. And then over here, to clean this up, it's just as simple as, well, yeah, and there was what I was talking about before. If you're not careful, you can carve in and whoa, it can get real bad real fast. There we go. So be very careful. Again, do as I say, not as I do. And the very last thing I want to do with the train track is, because it's kind of stubbing right here, I want to make sure that this is ready to go. So we're going to pull this up and over, just make sure that we have the height to bring this over eventually. And I think that this is honestly probably unrealistically steep. We're looking at about 4%, but I'm going to allow ourselves a little bit of imperfection. Now, before I zone everything in here, I've got one fun way to make this feel a bit more like a reasonable and realistic industrial district. I want to turn on just zoning cell and snap to grid, and we're going to take this to ground level. And I'm taking a single track and I want to run that along this zoning right here. The idea being that this would serve the back of some factories, and that's how they would get materials out of here. So we're going to connect up to this facility at a perfect 180. And this shouldn't do anything here as long as this is flat. It is not. So we'll flatten this area just a little bit. Okay, I just went off the deep end and I decided to redo this whole bridge. So the reason I did that is we were going down to go up. It looked really, really bad. And ultimately, I never really liked this bridge that came with the city because it was really steep right here. So I just decided to rebuild it. Now, we did destroy some zoning over here, so I will fix this even though this is not what we're focusing on today. Coming back to this was the whole reason that I decided to change this. I want to make a connection across here. Totally unnecessary. So we've done all of this for vanity, but sometimes you got to do things like this. It just feels good. And there we go. That will make this, at least in my estimation, appear to be a little bit more realistic. And now we'll just add some roadway connections through here to connect things up. And now we've added zoning through here and things are filling in quite nicely. I do want to add that park that we talked about over here though, and I think we'll formalize it and make it an actual small park. And there we go. I'm going to let this fill in to see how this area ends up looking. And honestly, for the most part, I think it's looking really outstanding. At least as outstanding as a business park can look. I do want to clean up some of the edges though. This is always a good best practice at the end to come through and just make sure that things make sense. And back things out a little bit. And then feel free to go into your soften terrain tool. Make it look a little bit nicer. And honestly, things are looking really, really good. The one thing I do want to focus on in this area before we move on from it is our landfill. We are in kind of a rough spot here. So we need to increase our processing speed. And the way that we do that is by adding a hazardous waste collection point. This increases our processing by 50 tons per month. And we can add multiple of these. So I've slid one down here. And for this one, it's not happy because it's overlapping with the landfill itself. If you want to get past that, the way that you do that is you can adjust your area tool. You need to make sure that it's bigger first before you shrink it, but you're able to do something like that. And then if you wanted, you could add another one of these on. Instead, I will expand this out a little bit. And then over here, we've got to fix this as well. And now with our industrial area rebuilt, let's move on to landscaping and detailing. So there are 5 separate things I want to do in the detailing section. The first is we've got to take a look at this train track right here. Look at this. It's basically hitting the side of this key wall. So we've got to improve this. And that is considerably better, although this train doesn't like it. I don't know what's going on right there. The second one I want to do is fix our forestry industry. So it was pointed out in the previous video that I added a whole bunch of trees underneath the power lines, and that whole wrapping thing that I've been doing, probably not super smart. So let's get this fixed. I couldn't help but think, is the problem that I'm wrapping these, or is the problem that the power lines are in the wrong spot now? And I think it's probably the latter. So I'm going to move these. And there we go. I just moved the power line really close to the road. And now I can reform this district to hopefully get it to snap closer to the side of the highway and closer to the power lines without actually encroaching. There we go. That is considerably better. And then I'm just going to make sure that there are no trees underneath these power lines. And while this was on my mind, I'm going to come back over to our other city and do the exact same thing. And the easiest way to do this is to grab a brush, set it to 100% and go underneath. Now, do understand that as you do this, you're going to actually have to find every single tree that you planted. The way that you can figure this out is actually just clicking on them. So these are wild bushes and pine trees and oaks. I'm not concerned about the bushes. That's fine. In fact, with these power lines, there are generally guides that the transmission companies will give you, and they'll say that you could plant, apple trees, for instance, because they're not that tall. But we don't want an oak tree underneath. That's crazy. And over here, I did replace that with apple trees and some flowering bushes and things of that nature. And I think it's really, really nice. So the next thing I want to focus on is parking, which seems like a weird detailing thing, but I want to add parking to this area because the industrial assets actually don't have all that much parking, particularly the warehouses like this one. So I think to make this seem a little bit more realistic, parking is the way that we're going to go. So we are going to need to purchase parking. So let's go into the progressions milestone. Underneath roads, we have parking areas. And we're just going to go with the real basic surface lots for now. And right now, we're just really using these for detailing. But in the future, we will dive deeply into the parking mechanic. We're going to go with the small ones. This is a very small industrial district. We're going to make sure that we're snapping to the roads. And then I want contour lines on so that I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to find basically areas like this up. And we've unlocked milestone 8, Big Town. We'll take a look at that in just a moment. But I basically want to go through and just add some parking interspersed through here, hopefully in underutilized areas. I prefer not to just demolish everything. And I do think that just adding those couple of parking lots made a huge difference. The one thing to keep in mind is that they will not terraform nicely. So we may want to go ahead and seek these things out so we can level around it and then smooth things out just a little bit. And then I want to remove some of the street parking that we have through here. That's very unusual. I would expect that in an industrial district like this, because of all the turning movements with trucks, you wouldn't want to see that. So we'll go into our road services, and I think we'll add a mixture of terraces and terraces with trees. So I'm realizing now I haven't gone over before how you place trees on a road, and it's fairly simple. Basically, if you have road services unlocked, you click on the icon that you want to add. So let's say you want to add a terrace. You can add that on one side of the road, hold it down and drag until you want it to end. You have to do it on both sides if you want it on both sides, which is kind of a double-edged sword because it means that you can really get things exactly how you want them, but it also takes a bit longer, but it's not that bad. And then you just drag and hold. You can do trees the exact same way, lights the exact same way, wide sidewalks that exact same way, and you can add a crosswalk just by selecting nodes if that's what you want to do as well. You can also add sound barriers. We don't really have a need for them just yet, but in the future, I'm sure that we will find a way to place them that makes sense. Now, one other important thing about the trees on the sides of the road that we're planting, so these will all grow over time, so don't be discouraged if they look really small. They will get bigger. The one thing that you cannot change is the species of the tree. So if you're coming from City Skylines 1, that is a difference. And then the final thing I want to do is plant trees in other locations and remove trees where they don't make sense. So right here, you can see we got a tree in the middle of this train facility. I just think that these are a little bit too close. We wouldn't want leaves dropping on the trains. So we are going to back all of these trees up. We'll certainly add some back in, but we will give some space and separation. And to plant our trees, we'll go with 100 brush size and a 50 brush strength, which I think is good enough to allow you to back out if you're making mistakes. Now, one thing I want to point out real quick, as I'm going through and adding landscaping through here, I'm trying to have a good mix of landscaping that'll have leaves in the winter and in the summer. So you don't want to have just deciduous trees that are going to have their leaves fall off and then leave all of these noxious uses completely exposed. So we want to have some evergreens in as well. So I've certainly planted those within here, and it'll still look green then in the winter, and that's very important. It's something that on plans for buildings like this that I always would look for. And I've added a small park space right here, nothing elaborate, but if you were at a factory and you wanted to go for a walk on your lunchtime, you could do that right there. And I think that things are really looking good, and there's just one more thing left to do. That's take inventory of what we've done with a brief city tour. Before we wrap up, we've got a whole bunch of neighborhoods to rename, starting right here where Miguel EMG recommended Philville. And for Parkbrook, Niron recommended Millville. Chase Phillips recommended Copperdale become Applewood Way. Noah Borman recommended Autumn Meadow become Sawtell. Morning Blaze recommended that a neighborhood that we've changed a lot become Mulligan Square, and I just love that. Gabe Vlad wanted to rename a neighborhood close to the new apple trees Blooming Apple. And Sam Reiser wanted to rename Rosewood End to Tutoria Hills. Sai the Cat wanted to rename Evergreen Hill Lantern Hills. Love that name. And Lukey Boy wanted to rename Spring Gardens Oak Flats. Now, I believe Kira wanted to rename this neighborhood Tutoria Place. And though I love the name, I think we're going to scoot it over here to Ravenwood Croft. Interestingly, no one provided a name for Hamilton Glen, so we're actually going to use Astro Nash's name of Keequam Hill. And this is named for Tim Keequam's family of Nicolay Bay fame. I know this isn't the city, but I think this is the perfect spot for the name. Pamela Wild had a simple one, recommending to change Rosewood Way to Rosewood Point, and I love that. Now, interestingly, there were a couple of different people who wanted to rename Manor Glen. We're going to go with Swag Assassin, who wants to name this Kirkland. And though Scratch Pencil wanted to name Manor Glen as well, they were diplomatic and were okay renaming Autumn Springs Crutoria as well. And that leaves us with the big one, and Jake O'Brien recommended that we rename Sunnyside Field Port Liability after the water tower, and I just love that. And with that, we've renamed everything, and I want to thank you all for your suggestions. There were so many of them down in the comments, so many excellent suggestions. Keep an eye out. We are going to have many more things to name, and I want the names to come from all of you. And with that, I think we're going to leave it here with one last look at Crutoria, and I really hope that you've enjoyed this one. If you did, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so, and I want to thank you for your time today. It's a privilege to be able to bring these videos to you. I don't take that for granted, and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.